You may have seen the headlines. The FDA approves first ever treatment to restore hearing. And if you have hearing loss, or your child does, or your spouse does, a headline like that doesn't feel abstract. It feels personal. And the immediate question is, could this help me? So let's talk about it honestly. What happened is a real breakthrough. And I don't use that word casually. After 20 years in audiology, this is one of the most significant scientific moments I've seen in hearing healthcare. But it's not a blanket cure for hearing loss. It's a breakthrough for a very specific genetic form. And if you understand that distinction, you'll understand why this news is both genuinely exciting and much narrower than most headlines made it sound. I'm Dr. Layne Garrett, founder of Timpanogos Hearing Tinnitus here in Utah. Today, I'm going to walk you through what this therapy actually is, who qualifies, and what the clinical data shows. And then also talk about what it means for the much larger group of people with hearing loss who are watching this wondering if this changes anything for them.
If you're navigating hearing loss or struggling with ringing in your ears, then you've come to the right place. The All Ears Hearing and Tinnitus podcast is your go-to source for expert insights, real stories, and cutting-edge solutions in hearing health. We'll dive into the latest advancements in hearing healthcare, explore groundbreaking treatments for tinnitus, and offer practical tips for better hearing. Here to help you tune into a world of better hearing, here's your host from Timpanogos Hearing and Tinnitus, Dr. Layne Garrett.
This is the first time the FDA has ever approved a treatment that addresses the biological cause of a genetic form of hearing loss. Not a hearing aid, not a cochlear implant, a biological fix to a biological malfunction. So what does it actually do? There's a gene called OTOF. Its job is to produce a protein called otormeni. Think of it this way. The inner ear has a microphone. The auditory system has the wire. But the otormeni is the switch that lets the message pass through. Without it, a child's inner ear can physically detect sound, but the signal never reaches the brain. The ear is structurally intact. The connection just doesn't fire. Otarmeni delivers a working copy of the OTOF gene directly into the cochlea through a surgical procedure. Once it's in place, the inner ear starts producing otormeni on its own. The switch turns on. For many treated patients, that allows the inner ear to send signals through the auditory nerve for the first time. The FDA approved it 61 days after filing, which is very fast, even under accelerated review programs, because the clinical results were that compelling. They called it groundbreaking, and that's not normal FDA language. When something is genuinely exciting, I'll say that. When it applies only to a very specific group of patients, I'll say that too. The clinical data comes from the CHORD trial, a phase 1 and 2 study published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2025. The trial had 24 pediatric patients aged 10 months to 16 years, all with profound hearing loss caused by the confirmed OTOF gene mutations. Of the 20 patients evaluable for effectiveness, 80% achieved or surpassed the primary hearing endpoint, meaningful improvement. That doesn't occur naturally in this condition without treatment. That's the baseline finding, and it's strong. With longer follow-up, 42% reached normal or near normal hearing levels, including the ability to hear whispers. That's not improved from profound deafness to moderate hearing loss. That's functional, natural hearing. Some of those children were subsequently able to stop using their cochlear implants. When I read that last part out loud, I had to stop and read it again. Children who had cochlear implants surgically placed devices that bypassed damaged hearing structures no longer needed them after gene therapy. That's not a normal sentence in audiology. It's worth noting, this was an accelerated approval based on a single-arm trial without a separate control group. Continued full approval is contingent on long-term data on speech development and quality of life outcomes. That's standard for accelerated pathways with the FDA, but it doesn't diminish what was shown. It's an honest picture of where the evidence now stands. Regeneron has committed to providing the therapy at cost to eligible U.S. patients, but out-of-pocket costs for the surgical administration itself are separate. OTF-related hearing loss affects about 50 newborns in the United States each year. 50. OTF variants occur for somewhere between 2% and 8% of inherited non-syndromic hearing loss, meaning hearing loss without other associated conditions. Inherited forms account for roughly half of congenital hearing losses, and a congenital hearing loss is a small fraction of the total hearing loss population in this country. There are approximately 30 million Americans with significant hearing loss. The vast majority developed it through aging, noise exposure, and ototoxic medications, or a combination of these things. None of those causes involved an OTOF mutation. Otarmeni does not apply to them, and I want to be direct about something before moving on. For those 50 families a year, rare doesn't mean small. If it's your child, this is everything. This therapy transforms what's possible for them. The scale limitation is not a criticism of the work, it's context the headlines did not provide. There are also specific candidacy requirements worth knowing. It's only indicated for patients with preserved outer hair cell function and no prior cochlear implant in the ear being treated. Beyond that, this is not something a local hearing clinic can administer. It requires specialized medical evaluations and surgical delivery at qualified centers. Here's where it gets genuinely interesting for the broader hearing loss population. Otarmeni is the first gene therapy to restore neurosensory function to normal levels in humans. What the field now knows because of this approval is that delivering a functional gene therapy to the inner ear works. The delivery mechanism, the safety profile, the durability at 18 and 24 months, those foundational questions have been answered. There are over 150 known genetic variants associated with hearing loss. GJB2, which affects a protein called connexin 26, accounts for nearly half of all recessive inherited hearing loss, and that's actively being studied for gene therapy as well. Researchers are working on therapies for other variants too. These pipelines exist specifically because of what the OTOF work demonstrated here was possible. At the far end of the research horizons, scientists are exploring whether gene therapy approaches might eventually extend to acquired forms of hearing loss, like the age-related stuff or noise-induced things we were talking about before. A 2025 review in Advanced Science noted that current OTOF data lays the foundation for expanded gene therapy towards more common hereditary deafness or even beyond to age, drug, and noise-related hearing loss. That's years away from clinical availability, though. But researchers are writing those words with some confidence now, and that's important. Otarmeni opened the door. What comes through that door over the next decade may eventually matter to far more people. If your child has been diagnosed with OTOF-related hearing loss, this conversation starts with a referral to a pediatric otolaryngologist at a center equipped to evaluate candidacy and administer this therapy. That's the right first step. If you're an adult with age-related or noise-induced hearing loss, which describes most people watching this, Otarmeni is not your answer today. The best available treatments remain properly fitted hearing aids and cochlear implants for severe and profound hearing loss. And if you don't know what type of hearing loss you actually have, that's the most important thing to find out. Not from a headline, but from a real diagnostic evaluation. I'll say this directly. There's a cure coming eventually. It's not a reason to delay treatment that exists right now, though. We know that untreated hearing loss is associated with accelerated cognitive decline. Every year of auditory deprivation has a cost. Waiting for a future therapy that may or may not apply to your specific situation while your auditory system continues without adequate input, that's not a good strategy. If you've been putting off getting evaluated because you're hoping the science catches up, I'd encourage you to reconsider. Now, I'd like to hear from you. When you saw the headlines about this, did you think it might apply to you? I'm curious what the media coverage made you believe. If you want to go deeper on different types of hearing loss and what treatments actually exist for each kind, I've put together a free online learning center with detailed articles. You can find a link in the description. And if you're here in northern Utah and this made you think, I should probably understand what kind of hearing loss I actually have, you can schedule a complete evaluation in one of our clinics along the Wasatch Front. We'll test more than whether you can just hear beeps in a quiet room. We'll look at how you hear in real life, your history, and whether anything suggests the need for medical referrals. You can find a link to make that appointment in the description too.